Welcome to episode number 069 of Something Else with Ari and Not KJ. Feast your hair holes on this week's episode as we take a look at Mid-South Wrestling from December 23rd, 1982. My name is Aria, and welcome to the show. So it's officially December. It's officially into 2023, and we're also at the end of 1982 down in Shreveport. This is the last regular episode of Mid-South Wrestling of 1982. Next week is a best of episode, which we will not be recapping, mostly because, and now you might be sitting here asking, well, come on, Aria, you do the Smoky Mountain recap shows. Why don't you do the Mid-South recap shows? Well, it's simple. I don't sit here and brag that I'm going to do exactly 200 episodes of Mid-South and then move on. The Smoky Mountain shows, I tell you flat out, I'm going to do exactly 200 episodes. So I have to do the recap episodes, because if not, then I'll only do like 190. And we don't need me doing 190. We need me doing 200. 200 episodes that nobody asked for. Hey, we're at 69 here, so what the hell? And yes, I said 69. I'm only 39 years old, folks. We can make that joke. So anywho, today we'll be talking about Mid-South Wrestling December 23rd, 1982. We'll also be talking about some weird news of the week. And no, I'm not going to be talking about poop this week on Weird News of the Week. We're back to cute animal stories. But before we get to cute animal stories, let's talk about some cute wrestling stories instead. Let's go to the intro with Boyd Pierce and this week's guest host, Cowboy Bill Watts.
Everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling Television. I'm Boyd Pierce, your host, and talk about a card, one of the greatest cards ever. All the top stars are here. Mr. Olympia will be in action. Chavo Guerrero takes on the New York State foot-stomping Hacksaw Duggan. Handicap match. Mr. USA, Tony Atlas takes on not one, but two big men in a handicap bout. Kamala, the Ugandan warrior, ready for action, but it'll all be headlined by Mid-South Tag Team Championship match. A sanctioned match here on television. One fall, no disqualification, and the loser of that fall must leave the Mid-South area. It'll be Mr. Racing 2 and Stagger Lee as they go against the champions of Mid-South, Ted DiBiase and Matt Bourne. To tell you all about it, our guest commentator, Bill Watts.
Well, Boyd, I think the key word that it became the key word on the 27th of October is no disqualification. Charlie Lay has said in a no disqualification match, whatever goes down, that's what the decision will be. And here we have Stagger Lee, who DiBiase claims is the Junkyard Dog. And DiBiase and Dugan and Matt Bourne were the rat pack that put together Junkyard Dog having to leave Mid-South for 90 days. Now that time is running out, but since then Stagger Lee has come on the scene and won the North American title. And then Stagger Lee and Mr. Wrestling 2 won a non-title bout. So here we have the showdown with Stagger Lee and Mr. Wrestling 2 on the one team against DiBiase and Matt Bourne on the other team. One fall, no disqualification. Loser of the fall, leave town. A lot of exciting action. Let's go to the ring now and race her Bowden.
All right. So this week, I mean, Boyd is going out here. Boyd is telling us this is one of the greatest cards ever. Ever is a long time, people. And Boyd is so confident that he is confident enough to come onto TV and tell us that this week's show is one of the greatest cards ever. That is a lot of pressure on this card. Will it live up to the hype? Well, I guess we'll find out in 35 minutes and 18 seconds, because that's how long this week's episode lasts. So today we're going to have Tony Atlas versus, and I quote, two big men. Jim Duggan, our Louisiana champion, one-on-one with Chavo Guerrero. Kamala is going to be in action. And of course, we have the main event, the no disqualification match for the Mid-South Tag Team titles as Mr. Wrestling 2 and Stagger Lee challenge Ted DiBiase and Matt Bourne. And the loser of the fall, this is like what happened on October 27th, the loser of the fall has to leave Mid-South Wrestling. Now, as we noted last week, and as you heard right there, they do not give a time frame. So at this point, I don't know about y'all, but I am being led to believe that the loser of this fall leaves Mid-South forever. I'll tell you what, we're about 8 to 9 weeks into Stagger Lee here, and it's conceivable that maybe Stagger Lee loses, and this is how we get Junkyard Dog back. Hey, like I mentioned last week, Mr. Wrestling 2 and Matt Bourne were just in Atlanta doing their thing. Maybe it's time for them. Maybe they were just here temporarily and are going back. Ted DiBiase's been here forever. Literally, he's been here forever. Look, we've been doing Mid-South Wrestling now. We've done a year and 2 weeks. This was the first week of December last in 1981 that we started with. So if you look at all the top names that we're in, and not including Junkyard Dog, because Junkyard Dog, he's your guy. He is the star of the territory. He's sticking around for a while. So not including him, everybody else is gone. Bob Orton is gone. Paul Orndorff is gone. Bob Roop is essentially gone, even though he still makes me look like a liar and comes back, periodically. All these people. Ernie Ladd is gone. The Samoans are gone. So what I'm saying, and we talked about this earlier in the year, this is territory wrestling. Unless you're the top guy, unless you're Ric Flair, unless you're Nick Bockwinkel, unless you're Junkyard Dog, you are not, you don't stay in a territory. You're there for a year, you're here for 18 months, and then you're gone. And so it could be Ted DiBiase, who's GUNN gone. And I get that doesn't even make sense at this point, but, it would make sense that it would be DiBiase's the next to go. But that's a discussion to have here by the end of the show when we see who it is that leaves. Up first, it's Mr. Olympia versus Tug Taylor. Mr. Olympia, the former Mississippi champion, who was also formerly forgotten in the angle with Junkyard Dog and the Rat Pack, is now just lost in the Mid-South quagmire. Last week, for those of you who didn't join us, he did a clean job in the middle of the ring to Gino Hernandez, who, yes, it sounds better than it is, because Gino Hernandez is just in for these TV tapings and like one or two other things. So he lost to somebody who's not even a regular. He lost his title. He's on the down and outs, and now we've got him one-on-one with somebody who's never won a match on Mid-South TV before. So Watts, by the way, in the same sentence, mentions that, first of all, I needed to clear my throat. And secondly, he also mentions that, later on today, Gino Hernandez will be wrestling again, and also that Paul Bosch will be doing commentary later today. As we've mentioned, that's your cue as to which match Paul Bosch will be doing commentary on. Now, Olympia heaved up the 300-something pound Tug Taylor for a body slam towards the end of this match. Now, yes, it's professional wrestling, and I can tell you, and I hope I'm not, this is not the Santa Claus isn't real moment. Professional wrestling isn't real. It is not a shoot. It's a work. Yes, Tug Taylor cooperated and went up for the body slam. However, in one of those things that they really don't stress these days in wrestling, Mr. Olympia made it look like it took a serious effort to hoist Tug Taylor up and drop him with a slam. And it looked legitimate. I know you can't legitimately body slam somebody unless they let you. But work with me here. Like, make it look like, it's legitimate. Don't make it look like you're just seriously allowing this man to slam you. Anywho, Olympia then won with the sleeper, and being the good baby face that he is, he slapped Tug Taylor in the back to wake him up afterwards. Louisiana champion Hacksaw Duggan versus Chavo Guerrero in another one of those, hey, this match really happened kind of things. Duggan is not taking this match seriously, pointing out to fans that Chavo is much shorter than he is. He's probably got a good 6-7 inches on him. It's funny because I think the first time I'd seen somebody do that in wrestling. And for some reason, this one has stuck with me. So, for whatever reason, it was in 2005 or 6 when TNA was doing the original LAX storyline with the New Age Outlaws. And this is before Hernandez came in. So it was Homicide and another, shall we say, diminutive wrestler. I think it was Machete who was wrestling. And Kip James, Billy Gunn, Daddy Ass, whatever you want to call him, he's a legit 6'4", 6'5". And when he's a babyface and he's mocking the serious heel for being about a foot shorter than him. Now, that one always stuck with me just because of, the bullshitty nature of it. You're burying your opponent for being short because you're then going to beat him later. Spoiler alert, in case you want to rewatch TNA 2006. So it just buried the heel along the way. It was a heel being a cocky asshole. That's what this was. And even as we mentioned last week that Duggan is getting more and more popular despite being a heel, he's still a heel. And so him doing an asshole thing like pointing out that his opponent is a foot shorter than him just is another asshole thing for him to do. Chavo got the better of Duggan on a number of occasions, which made Duggan cease laughing and begin taking this seriously. Duggan hit a body slam and a backbreaker for a 2 count. And just when Duggan started getting overconfident again, Chavo used a drop toe hold and slapped on an armbar while Bill Watts talked about his son, Eric Watts. And this is where we point out that thankfully we're watching Mid-South from 82 and not WCW Saturday Night from 92. Chavo avoided a knee drop and began using leg kicks. I'd like to think that some of the better MMA fighters learned to fight by watching early 80s pro wrestling. Duggan went for the spear in the corner, but Chavo leapfrogged over him and picked up the upset win with a sunset flip. Duggan somehow busted his eyebrow open when he hit the turnbuckle. Not sure how that happened, but this is now the second week in a row where the Rat Pack has lost a non-title match. Is the momentum going away? Are they going to lose the tag team titles here today? We're going to have to wait and see. So we go to commercial. We come back from commercial, and Bill Watts has something to say regarding that match.
Well, Boyd Pierce, I think that's just about like when Oklahoma State University played Tulsa this year, that they were a little overconfident. And they found out Tulsa University was for real in football, as did 10 other teams this year, because they had a 10-1 record. Well, I also believe that had Hacksaw Dugan thought Chavo Guerrero was going to be as competent as he was, he would have had the Rat Pack standing by. But one person they didn't underestimate last week, when it was for the Louisiana title, to show you how cohesive and how dangerous they are and how they plan to get anybody that gets in trouble out of trouble and capitalize on another person's misfortune. Let's join the final moments as Tony Atlas is whipping Hacksaw Dugan for the Louisiana title, and we'll see the outcome.
I guess it makes sense to air that afterwards because it shows that, hey, Duggan was confident of winning this week. He wasn't confident in winning last week, so he had to get his heel buddies to run in and help him. But it certainly feels like that's something he should have played before the Jim Duggan match, where he just lost, and not afterwards. I don't know. Anywho, we go to our next match. It is Tony Atlas versus Rick and John Davidson. Reeser introduced the match like he was talking to the dumbest person in the world, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. He explained to the crowd what a handicap match was. It's one man in a disadvantage against two men who will be working as a tag team. He then reiterated when he mentioned that Tony Atlas would be wrestling all alone. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there who, we've all been wrestling fans forever. Let's face facts. Not a single person listening to this show who hasn't been a wrestling fan for a long time. One of the pet peeves I know that some people have is when wrestling companies treat us like dumb idiots. I think sometimes it's good to treat people like dumb idiots, especially back at this time where you weren't getting 8 million competitive matches on TV every week. You have to do things like, hey, we're having a handicap match, and there's also a chance that you sitting at home have no idea what a handicap match is. So we're going to have Reese or Bowden explain it to you. You know, this isn't like nowadays where they just announce, hey, it's a ladder match, and you're just going to assume that everybody watching knows what a ladder match is. Now, mind you, at this point, I don't know what new fans are actually being made, so everybody probably knows what the hell a ladder match is. But that's my point. If we can explain what a fucking handicap match is, we can explain what a fucking ladder match is than any of the other random angles and matches that we have. So both John and Rick tried to overpower Atlas at one point, but Atlas slammed them both down. They then did a similar spot where Atlas went for a Greco-Roman knuckle lock on one, and the other came in, and so we had a pair of Greco-Roman knuckle locks, and Atlas ran them into each other. This was supposed to be treated like a tag team match with the Davidsons tagging in and out, but the referee just ignored that, and we got a 2-on-1 here instead. Both covered Atlas at the same time, and the referee counted, even though, that's patently illegal. Anyway, Atlas powered them both off, and then pinned one of them with a gorilla press slam and splash. Now, you would think, as my job as a podcast host, I should tell you which one was Rick Davidson and which one is John Davidson. I can tell you they don't spend any time trying to get this over to you, so I'm not going to spend any time trying to get it over either. We then get our next match. It is Kamala with Friday and General Skandor Akbar versus Tony Torres. Now, much like last week, Akbar paid Tony Torres extra money to wear a mask this week, which, as we pointed out last week, once it happens once, you wonder why the hell would any babyface go along with this? Now, this is where things get funny. The mask wasn't just any mask. This was a Mr. Wrestling 2 replica mask. And it wasn't just any Mr. Wrestling 2 replica mask. It was a Mr. Wrestling 2 replica mask that we saw a few weeks ago with a yellow stripe painted down it. So does this mean that Kamala and General Skandor Akbar or Friday are behind all of this going on with Mr. Wrestling 2? I don't know. Anyway, Kamala won quickly with 2 splashes to the back and then ripped off the mask and put it on his trophy stick to go along with El Silencio and Lester Park's masks from last week. Now it's angle time. So to set this up, Kamala and Friday have left the ring. Akbar is still in the ring, which, hey, screams angle alert. Let's go now to the angle.
Under his mask, they go to leave the ring, and Akbar is very happy, very proud of himself. Stagger Lee, I would be Wrestling 2, Wrestling 2. I had to think that there's something. I know how upset Wrestling to look at him. Wrestling 2 is really reading Akbar the riot act about that mask. I know how upset he's been. All right, Wrestling 2 starts on Akbar. Mr. Wrestling 2, you better watch it. Here comes Kamala. Here comes Kamala. Wrestling 2 fires away on Kamala. He pops Kamala a knee. He pops him another knee. Wrestling 2, Wrestling 2. Knock Kamala clear out of the ring. Wrestling 2 has just slammed whoever he is off the top rope. And Wrestling 2 is going to do some unmasking. He's going to do some unmasking of his own. Akbar trying to pull the man out of the ring. It looks like Wrestling 2 is struggling with that. Kamala's going off the top rope. Wrestling 2 doesn't see him. 385 pounds drops on Wrestling 2. Now Kamala is going for Wrestling 2's mask. Wrestling 2 is helpless. He's inert. He's laying there, and Kamala is about to unmask Wrestling 2. What nobody in the history of wrestling's done. Here comes Olympia and Stagger Lee, 2 more masked men. And they're in there to help Wrestling 2. And they're after Akbar and everybody. One thing about it, nobody likes Akbar. Kamala goes to pick up his manager, his second, his man Friday, and help him off. But Wrestling 2 is laying there. It looks like he could be badly injured.
And Bill, while things try to settle down here, we'll pause for this message and then be back for the Mid-South Tag Team title match for the loser of the fall to leave the area right after this word.
So what is going to happen next? All right. So as we mentioned, angle alert, because Akbar is left in the ring by himself. However, Mr. Wrestling 2 runs in and beats the crap out of him. Kamala then sees his manager getting his ass kicked, and he runs in and, he attacks 2. 2, by the way, 2 uses 3 of his running knee lifts. The running knee lift that knocks everybody down with 1, and he normally wins his matches with. This guy needed 3 and never took him off of his feet. Friday ran in, he got knocked down, and 2 decided that he was going to start ripping off Friday's mask. But as he's doing this, he's splayed on the mat trying to rip it off. So Kamala comes off the top rope with a big splash to 2, and then went after his mask. In ran Stagger Lee, in ran Mr. Olympia. Stagger Lee goes after Kamala. Olympia goes after Friday. Finally, Lee and Olympia run everybody off. But, oh yes, Mr. Wrestling 2 is hurt, and the tag team title match is next. So we are in a quandary here in Mid-South Wrestling. We have an advertised tag team championship match. Loser of the fall leaves town. What is going to happen? Mr. Wrestling 2, he's been taken away. He's been stretchered away. And now is Stagger Lee going to be wrestling 2-on-1 against the tag team champions? We're going to have to wait and see. Let's go to Bill Watts and Boyd Pierce, who are going to theorize on what we're about to see.
Boyd Pierce, we've been waiting. The crowd is really restless. An unusual event, Wrestling 2 being badly injured and carried out. And of course, DiBiase and Bourne have been in the ring almost since they got 2's body out of there. We don't know how badly hurt 2 is. He's okay. He's not critical or anything, but he is badly out of breath and maybe has a sternum cracked or something. DiBiase and Bourne have been demanding the match. The match is no disqualification. What DiBiase and Bourne are saying that if excuse me, I'm just about as bad as everybody else. Stagger Lee and Wrestling 2 cannot compete, then they have to forfeit. If they have to forfeit, somebody's got to leave town. Grizzly Smith has been up there. Let's go to the ring and Reeser Bowden.
This is a title match for the Mid-South Tag Team Championship belts. It's 1 fall, no disqualification, and a special stipulation is the loser of the fall must leave Mid-South. This event is 1 fall, no disqualification.
The match should go on. Wait, we got Wrestling 2 got hurt. Come on. We're going to have a match or not. They'll lose by forfeit. Somebody's got to lose. If he can't wrestle, then he's got to leave.
We'll see.
Grizzly Smith, the promoter, said the match will go on. It will go on.
The match will go on. Well, get him out of here then.
All right. So the match will go on. They mentioned Mr. Wrestling 2 possibly having a cracked sternum. And of course, I know we droll on the difference between old school wrestling and new school wrestling. 1 splash off the top rope was enough for a legitimate injury angle where you believe Mr. Wrestling 2 is injured and unable to wrestle and being carried off. I should point out last night as I'm recording this was the AEW Full Gear pay-per-view where MJF got his leg Pillmanized and then came back to win the main event match a few hours later. However, back to 1982. It's now time for our match. Ted DiBiase and Matt Bourne are in the ring, and Stagger Lee comes out with Mr. Olympia. So yes, Mr. Olympia is substituting in this match for the Mid-South Tag Team titles. Loser of the fall leaves Mid-South. And this is the exact same match we had 8 weeks ago. Except it's Stagger Lee instead of Junkyard Dog. And they continue to just say the loser of the fall leaves Mid-South, implying, to my mind anyway, that the loser of the fall leaves Mid-South forever and ever and ever and ever. So, two things worked against this match to the crowd. The first is this was the third hour of tapings, and we talked about this last week, where they normally only do 2 tapings, but this time to try to get it done by Christmas and give actually, I don't think they gave everybody the week off. I think it was just so they didn't have to come back and just to film one show. They did 3 hours. And at this point, now keeping in mind, they probably had like 20 minutes of downtime between each show. They're probably 4 hours into this taping at this point. And the fans, hey, to their credit, the fans stuck around. Because, I mean, if you remember some of the shows we saw earlier this year where fans were just filing out at the end of the second show to the point where it wasn't even funny, the fans, to their credit, did stick around, even if they weren't super duper into this. And the other thing is, this match really came out of nowhere. Now you can say that, this DiBiase Junkyard Dog feud, it's been going on since June, when DiBiase turned heel, when he was supposed to wrestle Bob Roop in the no DQ match where he'd leave Mid-South forever if he lost. And then Roop lost the title to Junkyard Dog. And then DiBiase turned heel, by beating Dog for the belt. You can say this has been built up since that moment. Except it really hasn't. This has been built up the last 3 weeks. And that's even pushing it. Like, yeah, what was like the first match back on October 27th, that was the long built up famous match that, at the very least I still remember, decades later. This match I forgot happened, even though I remember the finish. Go figure, right? So this one, like I said, not that much of a remembered match. And this was a fairly short, all things considered, and it was basically a 4-way brawl. It went less than 5 minutes. There are other matches on Mid-South you will see that will go longer than this match with all these stipulations on top. And so let's go to the finish of the match, and then come back and talk about it.
Got the sleeper, Tony Bourne, Matt Bourne going up to come off the top rope. Stagger Lee slams him off the top rope. He staggers him off the top rope. He's going out after him. Hacksaw Dugan comes. Hacksaw Dugan came with that hat on. Ted DiBiase fired him back. Stagger Lee went to try to save him. Matt Bourne stopped him. Mr. Olympia gets defeated. Mr. Olympia will have to leave Mid-South for 90 days. He will have to leave Mid-South for 90 days. The Mid-South champions are still Ted DiBiase and Matt Bourne. A very dejected Stagger Lee and a badly stunned Mr. Olympia.
And we'll be back. Gorgeous Gino Hernandez versus Tim Horner after this word from Mid-South Wrestling.
So, remember when Junkyard Dog lost the match? It was like, it was fucking, everybody had lost their pet dog. Motherfucker, like Bill Watts, like was on the verge of tears when Junkyard Dog lost that match. Olympia gets screwed here. Olympia loses, and it's like, oh man, Mr. Olympia lost. Now they finally give us a time frame. Mr. Olympia now has to leave for 90 days. And so Mr. Olympia, who was not even the person scheduled in the match, got screwed in the end. And oh my God, has this poor bastard been victimized by, everything in Mid-South since October 27th. He was pushed to the back burner. He lost his title in a non-televised match and to somebody he wasn't even feuding with. And now being the heroic babyface trying to step in at the last minute. He gets screwed, and nobody really cares that much. Like last time we had the giant Ted DiBiase, Matt Bourne, Jim Duggan victory celebration that they were still replaying 3 weeks later. This time, nothing of the sort. Now, I should mention at this point, though, that this show, basically the only copy I could find of this show was 35 minutes. The show normally runs about 41 minutes, 42 minutes. So there's about 6 to 7 minutes that have disappeared into the ether. Now, when I read the results on Cage Match, it was all the matches that we're talking about here with nothing extra. So either Cage Match didn't have every match, which is possible, or there was some promo or interview or recap that somehow has been lost to time. Either way, like, even if Ted DiBiase and Matt Bourne and Jim Duggan came out and did the "Yay, we won" promo, it was still like, you know, it was just not. It was not that big of a deal for poor Mr. Olympia. He was not the first person to lose the match and have to leave for 90 days. He was the second person that had to lose and leave for 90 days. Maybe Mr. Olympia will come back next week as Mr. Olympia 2. Spoiler, he doesn't. But anyway, the finish, in case you couldn't catch on with what Bill Watts was screaming at you, Jim Duggan came down wearing the half mask that was cut like a football helmet that he had last week that had the foreign object in it, and he used it to knock Olympia the fuck out. I did like that they had to do it behind the referee's back in this no disqualification match. So then we get our main event, well, the last match on the show. And the last match, after 3 tapings, 4 hours of wrestling that these people sat through, the last match that they were given was Gino Hernandez versus Tim Horner. And because Gino Hernandez is here, guess who's commentating? Yeah. So despite that, we get the whole match. Despite the fact, like I said, we are missing 6 or 7 minutes, we still got the entire match. Just the match length 30 seconds, and Gino won with a side Russian leg sweep, and we immediately go off the air. All right, then. So this was a weird way to end 1982. And, you know, it kind of came out of nowhere. And if this was WWE, we would talk about how they probably changed their mind in the last week and they decided to go with a different angle. But keeping in mind, this show, they taped 3 episodes. So this was the plan as of the episode that you saw or you heard me talk about 2 weeks ago. So it's not, for what it's worth, this was the plan. This is what happened. It just came across like it was a weird change of plans. So like we said before, that does it, not just for Mid-South this week, but for all of 1982. Next week is a best of show, so we're into 1983 when we come back with something else next week. I did skim through the best of show, and they did the same angle in Houston that they did in the Superdome a few weeks ago, where they unmasked Stagger Lee, but for reasons it could not be proven. And this time, the reasons were that the cameras mysteriously turned off. You'll figure. We do find out that in the first show in 1983, we're going to have the Great Kabuki debuting with manager Gary Hart. And spoiler, it's not Mr. Olympia under a different mask. But that's what we got to look forward to next week. But before we get going, let's go to our favorite segment, or at least my favorite segment, Weird News of the Week. And that is Weird News of the Week presented by Nobody. Nobody, the company that sponsors nothing. And for that, as always, we go to UPI.com. We go to our old friend Ben Hooper for escaped emus wander into vet clinic's parking lot. Employees at a veterinary clinic in England had an unusual day when a pair of loose emus showed up in the parking lot. The Edgewood Veterinary Group said in a Facebook post that the flightless Australian birds made an unexpected appearance outside of the clinic in Essex. Nicola Watson, the clinic's manager, said employees were initially skeptical when a resident told them that there were 2 ostriches in the area, but they took a look anyway and found nothing. The workers were shocked when the birds, identified as emus and not the related ostriches, turned up the next day in the clinic's parking lot. Employees corralled the emus, which were taken to a local petting zoo before later being returned to their owner. So yay, emus! And yay, the return of cute animal stories and no more stories about poop. But that's going to do it for this week's episode of Something Else. I want to thank everybody for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show. Check out the Smoky Mountain Rewatch Along project, and we'll talk to you again in 7 days.